Hello and welcome to Fortress, Alaska. Today's topic will be semi-auto pistols and I'm your host Dave. We have a lot of pistols on loan to do this video, so that's going to take a bit of time. Plus we got a lot of pictures to go through, so that's going to take a lot of time. So this will probably be my longest video to date, so grab a snack, get a drink, sit back and relax. So let's get going with this back to basics video by first starting with some history on semi-automatic pistols, only made possible by the invention of smokeless powder, because without smokeless powder, semi-auto just doesn't work. Black powder just fouls too much up. So the first patented semi-automatic pistol was done by was the Salvatore Dormus pistol. It was patented 11 July 1891, and it was patented by the Archduke Karl Salvator and Count Georg von Dormus. It fired the proprietary 8mm Dormus cartridge, which was obviously proprietary since it was the first semi-auto cartridge made. It uses a delayed blowback action, and it is fed from a 5-round Mannlicher stripper clip. And it looks basically what would look like a modern pistol. If it had a detachable box magazine, it would look pretty modern. But it did use a 5-round Mannlicher style clip. And only about 50 were produced. Now, the second patented pistol was the Schonberger Lallmann, which was patented 25 November 1891. Notice only a couple months separate there. It was designed by Joseph Lallmann. It's a modified ring trigger manual gun to fire semi-automatic. It used the 7.8 by 19mm cartridge. It is direct blowback. It also used a 5-round Mannlicher clip, but this clip went forward of the trigger guard as opposed to behind the trigger as in the Salvatore Dormus. And only about 35 of the original ones were produced. Now, there were other variations and things went on from there, but the very first one we're talking about here, that only made about 35. And it was submitted for Austrian military trials in 1896, but it failed. The next pistol we're going to talk about is the Borchardt C93. Now, this is the first mass-produced semi-automatic pistol. It was designed in 1893. It was designed by Hugo Borchardt. It fired the 7.65 by 25mm Borchardt cartridge. It's a toggle lock action. It used an 8-round detachable box magazine, which was inserted into the grip. Now, granted, the grip is kind of in the middle on this gun, but it is the grip. And they made about 3,100 of them. Now, this pistol is the one that was updated later by Georg Luger to become the famous Luger pistol. The next of these first semi-automatics we're going to talk about is the C96 Mauser. This had a fairly long lifespan, going from 1896 all the way to 1937. It was designed by three brothers, Fidel, Friedrich, and Joseph Federal. It fired the 7.63 by 25mm Mauser. There were also versions available in 9mm Mauser. 9mm Parabellum. It uses a short recoil action. Some models were stripper clip fed, and other models had a detachable box magazine. There were over 1 million of these produced. Copies were also made in Spain and China. One author refers to this as the gun that saved the world, because Winston Churchill used this gun to save his life when he was a young military officer, with the theory being without Winston Churchill, things during World War II might have gone drastically different. And yes, this is the gun that was the base for Han Solo's blaster used in the Star Wars movies. Okay, now, there are too many semi-auto pistols coming out of the turn of the century, and we're not going to go through all of them. But we are going to talk about the two big hits starting in the early 20th century, at the start of the 1900s. The first big hit was the pistol Parabellum, also known as the Luger pistol or the P08. It was designed in 1898 by Georg Luger. The original chambering for it was the 7.65 by 21 millimeter Parabellum cartridge. Then later it was upgraded to a 9 millimeter when Georg Luger developed the 9 millimeter cartridge. There were a handful of them made in 45 ACP to submit for the American military trials against the 1911 and the Savage pistol. They are very rare and hard to find these days. It does have only a single action trigger, and for those of you who think striker fired is a new thing, the Luger's a striker fired pistol. It uses a toggle lock action, not a sliding action that you would see like in the 1911 style pistol. So the toggle goes up and down, ejecting the cartridge, loading a new cartridge. It came with a standard 8-round detachable box magazine that we're very familiar with in the grip. The military also had 32-round drum magazines for them. There were over 3 million of these produced for World War I and World War II in commercial sales. Only current production of a Luger that I can find now is by a company called Lugerman, and they make 45 ACP Lugers, they make 10 millimeter Lugers, and they start at a base price of $5,000 and they go up quickly from there. So if you want a new production Luger, they're really pricey. You're much better off hunting the secondary market for a good used Luger. This particular one was made in approximately 1920, and it fires the 7.65 by 21 millimeter Luger cartridge, also known as the 30 Luger. Then from there, we step up into the Colt 1911, aka the Colt government model. It was designed over several years, 1900 to 1911, for military trials, iterations going back and forth and updates and improvements to the gun. Designed by John Moses Browning. It was originally designed in the 45 ACP cartridge, but it was also produced through the years in 9mm, 38 Super, and many other cartridges that they make today. So you can get it in many different chamberings now. It uses the Browning tilting barrel short recoil action system, which is pretty much still the standard recoil action used today in any semi-automatic pistol of any power. Lower power guns can be direct blowback, and there are other systems, rotating barrels, gas delayed, but the most common type of action is still the Browning tilting barrel as seen in the Colt 1911. This one uses a 7-round detachable box magazine. That was the standard. Now they do make 8 ones today, and you can get extended magazines that hold more. You can even get double stack 1911s now. So there are many options. There were over 4 million of these produced and counting. They are produced by far more companies than I care to list here in this short video. So if you want a 1911, there's no problems finding one. The interesting thing is this Luger was made approximately 1920, so it's just over 100 years old. This 1911 is the 100th year anniversary model from 2011. So while it's not 100, this pistol itself is not 100-year-old, the design is well over 100 years old. So these two were contemporaries, and they both served very well. So, and now just strictly a little bit on the cartridges. This is the 45 ACP used by the 1911 in this standard military format. This is the 30 Luger cartridge, and this is the 9mm cartridge. So you can see there are drastic size differences there. So that's just a quick overview on those two. Those were the big hits of the early 19th century. And there are far too many semi-autos during World War I and World War II to talk about them all. But I do want to hit one high point, or I should say high power, and that is the Browning high power. Also known as the P35, the HP35, and a few other names. It was designed over many years, actually started design like in 1914 and didn't get finished till 1935. It was designed by John Moses Browning and Dieudonné Save, hope I said that right, while they worked at FN. Now, Dieudonné also designed the FN FAL, so he was quite a good firearms designer between finishing the 1911 in designing the FNFA. I'd have to say he was a very successful designer. It was originally chambered in the 9x19 Parabellum. It also uses the Browning tilting barrel short recoil action, single action trigger. It had a comes standard 13 round detachable box magazine. You can get 15 rounders and then extended ones beyond that. There have been over 1.5 million of these produced. Current production of any of these, Browning doesn't make them anymore, FN doesn't make them anymore. I believe there's a Turkish firm that makes a copy. So if you want a new production one, they're a little bit harder to find. Secondary market's the place to find these. This particular style pistol, the Browning High Power, has a magazine disconnect, which basically means that with the hammer cocked and the magazine taken out, the trigger does nothing. This was a requirement of the French military, who wanted to have a safe way for people to unload their guns and know that they wouldn't actually accidentally go off. It's really the French military you can blame for that, but has a magazine disconnect in it. Now, what makes this pistol particularly unique is during World War II, it was a general issue sidearm by both Allies and Axis powers, which meant you were just as likely to run across a Canadian forces carrying one as you were a German force carrying one. And even there are reports of some Japanese military officers having carried Browning High Powers. So it was a standard sidearm on both sides, Axis and Allies, during World War II. Now, real quickly, I'll cover one other thing since we're talking about these style pistols. These are all single action pistols. And just as a reminder, for single action, the hammer must be cocked, and it's cocked by the slide going back and forward, and then you pull the trigger. If the slide doesn't go back, the trigger does nothing. So that's a single action pistol. These are all single actions. That was the standard. Same like here. We'll take the magazine out, make it easy. The Luger, you pull the trigger. Oops, hard to do that way. Slide comes back, or the toggle goes up, back, loads a new round, pull the trigger. If the toggle does not cycle, the trigger does nothing. So, single action only, both of them. And once again, striker fired pistol, hammer fired pistol. So neither one is really a new concept. Many people think striker fire is a new thing. It is not. It has been around for many years. Okay, now the next big step in semi-autos would be called the Wonder Nines. This is really epitomized mostly by the Beretta M9, which was adopted by the U.S. military in 1985. The distinguishing features of the quote Wonder Nine are high capacity double stack magazines. Then they were called high capacity. Now they're standard capacity. You don't find many single stack full-size duty pistols. Full-size duty pistols are almost always double stacked now, if they're going to be in 40 caliber or less. They were double action. As a reminder, double action means you pull the trigger, the hammer will go back, and then fall. So that's double action, and it'll do it every time. And just a reminder, I did clear and check all the firearms before I started filming, so they're all safe. But they also fire in single action, which means if the hammer is cocked, you can pull the trigger and the gun fires. And upon firing, the slide will go back, forward, leaving the hammer back, so it's now in single action. So that's what they call a double action, single action system. It's double action when the hammer is down, single action when the hammer is back. Nice thing about the M9 is it has a decocker, which means you can mechanically decock it and put it in safe that way. So this is one of the first of the Wonder Nines. Another of the Wonder Nines, which was late coming to the country, is the CZ75. The CZ75 is from 1975. It is a Czech design, and because of the situation in the Eastern Bloc countries at the time, there weren't a lot of CZ75s getting into the United States in 1975. But it is one of the Wonder Nines. It is an all-steel pistol. It is double action, single action. This particular one is set up to have a decocker instead of just a safety. I prefer decockers. The safety version, you can carry it cocked and locked like a 1911, or you can manually lower the hammer and carry it in double action mode. So this is another version of the Wonder 9. Of course, one of the most popular and one of the finest of the Wonder 9s, the Sig Sauer P226, designed for the U.S. military trials to compete against the M9. Once again, if you saw my other videos, you realize both these pistols met all the requirements for the U.S. military. They both passed with flying colors. It came down to price. SIGs cost too much for the government, so they bought Berettas, but both pistols were more than suitable for their intended purpose. Once again, it's a double action, single action pistol, and like the CZ75 that I have here, this SIG is designed to have a decocker, so that when the hammer's back, should you want to decock it, there's just a lever here. You push down the lever, decocks the pistol. Safe way to carry it with the hammer down. Your safety at this point is the long double action trigger pull. It is a fairly smooth trigger pull. It's a nice trigger. So, and then there's what I like to call the battle tank of the Wonder 9s, the Ruger P85. Yes, even the Ruger P85 constitutes a Wonder 9. It also competed against the Beretta M9. It is actually a very good pistol. It's a battle tank. It's extremely durable. These things are extremely durable pistols. They're heavy. They are bulky and awkward. They're the battle tank of pistols. But I will say this about the Ruger, is if you want one of these now, you can find them on the secondary market, usually less than $200, which makes a great full-size duty pistol for the price. It is reliable, it is durable, and it is not at all popular. So if you want a good, inexpensive Wonder 9, I have seen these for $185 in used stores, in the used rack at the gun shop, in very good condition. Not beat up old ones, but in good condition. There's just no market for them. So they make a good, durable pistol for someone who's on a budget. It is a full-size duty pistol, so it's a little bit hard for concealed carry. And it also has a decocker. It's currently in the safe mode, which means it will not keep the hammer back. But if the hammer is cocked, you can decock it. This one, the safety will stay down, as with the Beretta. The safety will stay on. You can get a different version of the Beretta so that it only decocks and does not have the safety. But these were 4 of the Wonder 9s. Now there was a 5th. You've probably heard of it, and I don't have one here to show you. I'm sure you can find a picture of it. But that was the Glock. The Glock is actually contemporary to the Beretta and the SIG. Came out a bit after the CZ, but so the Glock came out in '82, went for Austrian military service. I'm sure you have all heard of it, but also constitutes a Wonder 9. It is, however, striker fired in a different system than these. Now, not everybody realizes, but the Glock was not the first striker fired polymer frame pistol. That was actually the H&K VP70, and I'll throw a picture in here so you can see what it looks like. It had a staple gun quality trigger. The barrel, I don't want to say it was oversized. It was bored in such a way that there was some blow by on the bullet as it went down the barrel to reduce recoil, because it's a blowback action. It is not a locked breech action. So it's a 9mm blowback. It's a unique system. They were not really a success, but I'll throw in a picture so you can see what one looks like. And there are other good YouTube videos on just how bad the HK VP70 was, and you can look those up. Okay, now this brings us to the current state of semi-automatic pistols. They are almost always polymer framed, usually striker fire. This one happens to be hammer fire. This is a Ruger LCP2. This is one of my carry guns, and I had to get it out of my pocket and clear it. That's why there was a break. But it has a hammer. It is not a striker fire. There's a hammer in there. It is kind of like a single action because you do have to cycle this slide for it to cock the hammer, and it has a okay trigger pull, but It is polymer framed. It has the trigger bar safety built in, and some are striker fired. The Ruger happens to be hammer fired. Then my other carry pistol, the one that sits on my hip and not in my pocket, would be the Sig Sauer P320, which is also the current U.S. military pistol as the M17. The only difference really being the color, and the military version has a safety. You can get the civilian version with a safety if you wish. It, however, does not have the trigger safety built in. Sig goes around that other ways to do their safeties. They've had some issues, but it is a good, solid, sturdy pistol. It is accurate, it is reliable, and it is fairly light to carry. Once again, the standard modern pistols is they're almost always polymer framed, striker fired. This one is indeed striker fired. Has no hammer, but does have a striker. Has a nice trigger pull on it. Like I said, no safety on this one. You can get a version with a safety. So this is the current state. Now there are many manufacturers. Every major manufacturer except Colt, which is now owned by CZ, makes a striker fired polymer framed pistol. It is the most common style pistol used today for military and law enforcement. Glock has about 60% of the market, and the other 40% of the market is between Sig, Walther, H&K, Smith & Wesson, the major manufacturers. And there are many other manufacturers who make striker fired polymer pistols. You can also get polymer framed pistols with hammers. But really the striker fires have taken over the market. They almost inevitably will have a double stack magazine. Yes, this is the magazine that's loaded because it's my carry gun and I did clear everything before I did anything. Little ones like the pocket pistols, little single stack magazines. So that's the current state. And just as a reminder, striker fire is not new. In fact, if you go back to the beginning of this video, the second semi-automatic pistol ever designed and patented, the Schoenberg Laumann, was striker fired. And the first polymer frame pistol was the HK VP70Z from 1970. So striker fired polymer framed pistols, neither is a new concept. They just were combined successfully by Glock and made a pistol that is ultimately reliable and durable and very popular and safe to use. So if you sat through all this, I thank you. I also want to thank those people who provided firearms on loan so I could do this video. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. I guess I haven't talked this long in so long, so hard for me to speak right now. Like and subscribe. Please comment, ask questions if you want. I hope you learned something from watching these videos. And as always, have a good day. And if you can, support me on Patreon. If not, not an issue. Also, my Facebook link should be down below somewhere, so you can find that. Once again, thank you very much for watching.